And welcome back to WHAS 11's live special presentation tonight, the U.S. Senate debate. The 6 Democratic candidates in this race for the May primary are joining us. We are so proud at WHAS 11 to be teaming with Simmons College of Kentucky, located right here in Louisville. Their students are here going to be asking questions. Richard Hughes is a sophomore at Simmons, and he has a question tonight, and it'll be directed first to Tom Rechtenwald of Louisville. Richard, thank you for coming in. We appreciate the enthusiasm of the folks at Simmons. I know they've got a big watch party, so they're watching you here tonight.
Yes, sir. All right, good evening. My question is, historically, members of the African American community have voted and overwhelmingly supported the Democratic Party. Do you believe the Democratic Party takes this support for granted? If not, how would you balance the needs of the African American community with that of the Democratic Party if there's a separation of the two?
Well, I can understand where there be an appearance that that is true, what you said, that the Democrats have taken the African American community for granted. I tend to talk about the African American community in Louisville here where I live, and I came from the West End where there's a lot of poverty and a lot of African Americans living there. And I support free education for those folks, and especially 2-year degrees. I think that's been mentioned on a national level. And I think if we could offer that, we can offer classes online that are much cheaper and inexpensive to produce and get a lot of people through those 2-year colleges. A lot of times the people who really need those free educations don't even have the transportation to get there. So that's the importance of online college. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Tom. Celeste Wilder, your answer to Richard's question there.
Yeah, Richard, my sense is that I believe the party has taken your vote for granted for a long time. And I've personally been trying to spend a lot of time in West Louisville and actually reaching out to folks to understand your concerns. My sense is that if we need to address racial injustice in Kentucky, which we do, we need to address it on 2 fronts. We need policies that matter, things like criminal justice reform, decriminalization of poverty, economic development, urban infill, et cetera. But it's also really important that we get leaders who stand up and are willing to just verbally address our own white privilege or the very fact that there is still racial injustice in this country. So it's a matter of policies, but it's also a matter of leaders who are willing to stand up and recognize the problem.
All right, Jim Gray, you pick it up there.
Well, clearly nothing can be taken for granted. Experience and record has so much to do with future performance. As mayor of Lexington, I addressed, for example, affordable housing, which affects the African American community significantly. We've addressed also, for example, in our police department, we've addressed body cameras. So this is speaking to a community that itself recognizes that changes need to be made. And that's what I'm running on, is a record of experience in addressing significant issues, economic issues, and social justice issues.
Rory Houlihan.
The answer is yes. And in my business, I pointed out that in our room, there was nothing but blonde hair and blue eyes, and we did something about it, and we diversified our workforce, okay? I'm old enough to remember the days of the 1960s and what black folk had to do to get the right to vote and the rights that they had. My first vote was for the first black mayor in our city. I cast the first vote, and I'm very proud to say that. Blacks have to run for office. You are just as smart as anybody else here.
Jeff Kinder.
My son is biracial, so my son is half white, half black. You can use the term African American if you want to, but I don't look over here and call my opponents Swedish American or Irish American. I just say white, black. I think there's always going to be a racial problem from time to time, but from what I found in Kentucky with my ex-in-laws, who were all black, when I lived in St. Louis for a couple months with them, I was the only white guy in the neighborhood. But it's usually how you treat people. We don't always need to be making policies and laws, but we always need to treat everyone with dignity. But yes, they do take the black vote for granted.
Ron Leach.
We do have issues when there's more young black men in America in prison, and often in for-profit prisons, than there are in college. We have a problem. When you have systemic unemployment within black communities, often quarter of the population or greater for decades on end, we have a problem. When we have school systems that inherently are disadvantaged because we still here in this country, unlike any other first world or industrial nation, link the funding of our schools to the local tax base, and you have perpetual generational gaps and inequalities that constantly generationally set folks back, we have a problem. Yes, we have been taking you for granted, and you should hold us accountable.
Thank you, gentlemen. Joining me now is Anna Caldwell. She is also a student at Simmons College here in Kentucky. Anna, you'll begin your questioning with Celeste Wilder.
Thank you. Good evening. My question is, what will you do to bring economic development and positive attention to the advantages West Louisville offers to existing and relocating businesses?
I think there's a few things to address in that regard. On one hand, we need a greater focus on urban infill. We have a lot of empty buildings that actually offer a good infrastructure for businesses and for economic development, but instead we keep pursuing economic development in suburbs and in new buildings on the outskirts. So the more we can do to actually offer tax breaks and incentives to bring folks into older buildings, the better we can revitalize some of our more depressed neighborhoods. And then I think we also need to recognize that that West Louisville needs to look beyond pure industry. When you look at like Rubbertown, when you look at the fact that the industrial pollution from a lot of the businesses that get set in West Louisville, which is really, if it were its own city, it would be the 4th largest city in Kentucky. And when I talk about Louisville being the 10th most polluted city in Kentucky, that's mostly centered in West Louisville, because that's the business that's been put there, because I think a lot of folks just don't care about that community, and we need to care.
Jim Gray?
Well, caring about a community means recognizing that sometimes government needs to adjust and get out of the way. In my experience in business, creating jobs has a lot to do with the environment, with the quality of life of the place. So once we lift up, and Celeste actually talked a lot about just now about urban growth and urban development. And once we lift up a city and a particular region, area of a city, we can see then economic growth occur. And this focus on quality of place and quality of life is enormously significant and important in the development process.
Rory Houlihan.
Okay, first couple questions. Do you know more what your community knows needs to happen than I at the Senate level? Do you know what you need to have happen? Yes or no?
That's a yes.
Okay. Then, what we did in the 1960s is that we raised up community leaders. We taught them what skills they needed to get the job done. We gave them the money to get the job done. I would prefer to work through community leaders and create a new leadership for this area than just to give you a development plan. I'd rather develop you, not develop an area.
Jeff Kender.
There's all kinds of things that we can do, but first we got to educate our children and have education as our top priority, and that also goes for vocational training. So if someone wants to move industry in here, they have the workers that they're looking for. We need infrastructure all over our country. Our roads and bridges are crumbling. If you look at Lexington and you look at Center Point, there's a hole that's been there for 6 years, and this man over here telling me that he's a job creator. Jobs has increased all over our cities in the past 7 years. There's nobody on this panel that's a job creator. I go to job and I work at a job 12 hours a day. And Center Point is a disaster, Mayor Gray, disaster.
Ron Leach.
Revitalizing and preserving some of the incredible architecture of West Louisville, marketing and trying to attract businesses, providing incentives. Now, a lot of that is local government, local action, but on the federal level, think what we could have accomplished over the last decade plus, rather than $4 trillion, $5 trillion in Iraq and Afghanistan, if we had reinvested in our urban cores, if we had reinvested in our infrastructure that the Society of Civil Engineers years after years tells us that we need approximately $3 trillion investment over the next 20 years, we need to focus on building America.
Tom Rechtenwald of Louisville.
I think I probably can answer this question better than my colleagues here because I grew up in the West End. I lived at 3602 Wright Avenue until I was an adult. Once married, I moved to the Shively area, lived there for 45 years, and just recently moved to the Iroquois Park area. So yes, I know about the problems there. I know that the 9th Street divide is an imaginary wall taller than anyone that Donald Trump would ever build. Fortunately, there is beginning to be some good things being done. I saw this morning where Heine Brothers is moving their headquarters there. That's a great move down at 13th Street. That's not deep West End. I'm ashamed to say that my daughter, not that my daughter's involved in this, but I don't know the name of the organization, but she's working very hard on a committee that is proving that we can do good things in the West End. Thank you.
All right, thank you, gentlemen. Next round of questioning, we begin with WHAS 11's political editor, Chris Williams, and his first question is directed to Lexington Mayor Jim Gray.
A recent article by James Grant in Time magazine that has been controversial recommended that every American citizen would have to pay $42,988.12 to raise the $13.9 trillion U.S. debt. Now, those numbers have been debated, but how do you propose the U.S. Senate address the national debt?
You know, historically in America, we have built ourselves out of recessions. We have built ourselves out of depressions. We have built our economy. If you look back at America after World War II, what did we do? We built the interstate highway system. What should we be doing today? We should be doing the same. We should be investing in our infrastructure in a significant and meaningful way. Now, that means addressing infrastructure in a modern economy. The high-speed internet, for example, the SOAR project that former Governor Beshear and Congressman Hal Rogers have introduced, is a project that has enormous merit. And it's the kind of project that we ought to be looking at as a country. We ought to be considering in a more meaningful way. I come out of an industry where that is primary.
Rory Houlihan from Winchester, Kentucky.
You know that Eisenhower inherited a 127% GDP deficit. He didn't cut taxes. He kept taxes at about 91%, okay? And he used that money to build our infrastructure. He used that money to rebuild Europe and create a new area for us to sell goods in, okay? Investment is not shrink. Today we have $1.2 trillion in shrink just due to right-to-work laws. We have $520 billion due to great tax breaks that Mitch McConnell kept in 2010. We have $200 billion a year in jails and incarceration. That's a loss of income. We are shrinking our economy and expecting it to grow.
All right, thank you. Jeff Kinder.
Well, being represented by people like Mitch McConnell and Rand Paul, we never will get any infrastructure in the United States. So everyone might as well forget about that with their voice leading the Senate. We do have to build, but why not tax companies that ship jobs overseas? And why not tax our millionaires and our billionaires a little bit more? The guys that fund some people's campaigns. Why don't we do that? We do have to build our way out. We do have to invest in infrastructure. But we ought to penalize companies for shipping jobs overseas. How American is that? And then usually some of them like GE and some others don't even pay no income tax. That's despicable.
Mr. Leach.
We have witnessed over the last 35 years the largest transfer of wealth the world has ever witnessed. And it's been from middle class and it's been working Americans to about 0.1% of America. We started in 1980, we lost all fiscal responsibility, and it's been a downhill trend since. Let's rectify that. Let's start with closing and blocking inversions by corporations for tax evasion purposes. Let's restore a real top marginal tax rate by historic norms as existed before 1980. Let's tax capital gains and carried interest earnings the same as the earnings for working Americans.
Tom Rexenwald.
Yes, we definitely do need to invest in our infrastructure to rebuild and repair where necessary. The longer we wait to do this, the more it's going to cost in the long run. We could start by eliminating the cap on Social Security taxes. Once a person earns $118,500 a year, they no longer have to pay that 6.5% Social Security tax. To me, this is absurd. I mean, if somebody's going to get a break on the Social Security tax, it ought to be the people who can't afford it at most, and be put on those who can afford it the most. That would give us more money to help us reduce the national debt.
Silas Wilder.
Well, you reduce the debt with a combination of cost savings and revenue increases. You certainly, you can't reduce the debt by spending billions to build more roads and bridges. And I respectfully, those are good things to do, but that's no way to save money. I have balanced budgets before. As Mayor Pro Tem of Frankfort, we ended years of deficits, created surpluses instead, and we did it by making hard decisions. And they weren't always popular, but sometimes that's what's needed to take care of something like this. When you look at the national debt, only a third of that is even discretionary spending. The bulk of that is military spending. I think there are plenty of ways we can cut our military budget in ways that don't harm national security by getting rid of vehicles and supplies that we don't use, that we scrap or store overseas. We can incorporate tax loopholes that allow 15 of the Fortune 500 to avoid paying any income taxes. And if we need to raise taxes on the wealthiest among us, then so be it. Our wealthiest friends can afford to pay the same they can pay less than they did under successful Republican presidents like Dwight D. Eisenhower, and we would all be better for it.
Thank you. Our next round of question begins with the Courier-Journal's Joe Girth, and we begin with Rory Houlihan.
Well, speaking about finding economic opportunities for coal miners as the economy moves toward cleaner sources of energy, Hillary Clinton said, we're going to put a lot of coal miners and coal companies out of business. Do you see a future in the coal industry in Kentucky, and if so, what is it?
Eastern Kentucky, which is mined through shafts, will probably not be economically viable. I actually have studied this quite some bit. Okay, clean coal, our energy systems are based upon the always lower price game. Our utilities basically go to those who produce the cheapest energy. Right now it is natural gas. The coal companies had an opportunity to invest in their business and decided to listen to our senior senator and did not invest at a critical period of time. Can we revive coal? Yes.
Thank you, sir.
But it'll take time.
Jeff Kinder.
Unlike Grandpa, I tell all my friends in Eastern Kentucky, where I'm from, that I cannot promise them coal jobs, and I can't tell you that coal's going to be here forever. I can tell you that it's still over 40% of our nation's electricity, and still over 90% of Kentucky's energy comes from coal. So that's not going away tomorrow. But I think with we could do something with the hemp industry. There's all kinds of land and everything. Just saying we're going to train the miners, that don't give people jobs. People are losing jobs right now. People are losing their homes. This is real. And none of my opponents will say that the EPA is overreached any, not one of them. So when they come to Eastern Kentucky this Saturday, they need to tell the miners that the EPA has done nothing wrong to them, because they'll hear it from them. Mr.
Leach?
Our coal communities face really major challenges. Major market forces that are against them, a glut of natural gas, more competitive alternative energy. But with those challenges, we need to make our commitment to those families for generations have sacrificed their health, their lives, and many times their environment to fuel the great American industrial economy. I will not stand by as your senator and see those sacrifices not honored and us not commit to a new future for them. Secretary Clinton actually had proposed a $30 billion investment in those coal communities that you should explore.
Tom Rechtenwald.
Thank you. Joe, your timing is ironic on this because just 2 days ago in your newspaper, you reported that the Peabody Coal Mining Company is going bankrupt. I mean, Peabody has been synonymous with coal here in Kentucky for as long as I can remember, and I've been around a lot of years. The old John Prine song talked about, "Daddy, will you take me back to Muhlenberg County?" And he told his son, "Sorry, but you're too late in asking. Mr. Peabody's coal train done hauled it away." So I would work to help coal industry to last as long as it can, but I would not let them ignore EPA regulations. Mitch McConnell likes to talk about President Obama's war on coal, but I think it's Mitch McConnell's war with the EPA that we really need to discuss.
Cellis Wilder.
Yeah, Rand Paul and statewide Democratic leaders do this too, keep telling this myth that if we can just kill the EPA, that our old way of life is going to come roaring back. And that's really a shame because they know that isn't true. Environmental regulation has contributed to the decline of the coal industry, but it's not even the most important factor. And things like the fracking boom, reduced demand from China, the fact that we've already been mining it pretty hard and there's newer coal seams out west in Colorado that are more cost effective, have all come together to make Kentucky coal less cost effective. And we're not going to be able to fix this problem until we get real about the nature of the problem and own it and fix it. And that's why my platform includes the expansion of federal relief for out-of-work miners and their families, as well as investments in diversified local economies, land remediation, alternative energy on strip mine sites, infrastructure development, including tech infrastructure, and more educational opportunities so we can build a 21st century economy.
Jim Gray.
Coal miners and those associated with the coal industry are some of the most productive people in America, and they have been for generations in Kentucky. Now, regrettably, the rug has been pulled out from under them. Now, that can be a function of market forces or it can be a function of regulatory forces, but that is the condition. And we must focus on education and we must focus on training and retraining. Now, I know something about this because I've spent my life and my career in recruiting jobs, in recruiting industry. There is opportunity in Eastern Kentucky. There are opportunities for increased manufacturing, for advanced manufacturing. We are seeing those opportunities in some of our smaller communities today. Yes, organic growth is important and it's significant, but we can bring new jobs and opportunities to all parts of our state.
We begin our next round of questions with WHAS 11's Renee Murphy, and we begin the questioning with Jeff Kender. Renee?
We're getting more questions in, and one person wrote in to say only 30% turnout in the governor's race. How will you get out the vote to unseat Senator Rand Paul?
I think that people's going to want to elect a common person just like them. I haven't been a mayor like this guy has for 6 years or on a council and like some of these guys has. I'm just a regular, everyday Joe. I'm a single dad, grandson of coal miners myself. I work 2 jobs to get myself through school. And like I said, I'm running this campaign while working 12-hour shifts at a factory, and I am a United Steelworker. I'm going to defeat Rand Paul because he wants to raise the retirement age to 70. And he's for means testing Social Security. And we're going to get him on economic kitchen table issues. I know those kitchen table issues, believe me.
Ron Leach from Brandenburg.
Typically, in presidential election years, Democrats do turn out higher than off-year elections. We can hope with a very attractive candidates, whether that be Bernie Sanders or Secretary Clinton at the top of her ticket, that Democrats will come forward and vote. But part of the reason that folks do not vote, do not get involved, is they truly do not believe that their voice is heard, that it makes a difference. And there's plenty of indication that no matter how popular a piece of legislation is, how much folks want it, it's not likely to get onto the Senate floor or the House floor to get a vote unless a handful of folks, lobbyists, industries, or those with money choose to back it. Until we get the money out of our democracy, till we stop the slide towards plutocracy, folks are going to be disenfranchised, disenchanted, and they will not vote.
Tom Richtenwald.
Tonight's meeting makes about the 12th time that I've been out around the state to get my name known. With me not accepting any money for my campaign, that's one of the biggest issues I have is getting my name known. Once I'm elected to be the Democratic candidate on May 17th, I'll be contacting party leaders in every county and asking for meet and greets and ask them to set up meetings with any groups or family activities that might be going on. And there's no place in Kentucky I won't go.
Thank you very much. Sellis Wilder.
This is exactly why I'm trying to solidify a progressive voice in Kentucky, because we keep fielding candidates who don't fire up our base, and that's one reason voter turnout's so low, because we're not giving folks, Democrats, somebody they can get enthusiastic about voting for. We keep fielding candidates who've never even heard of the president, who keep siding with big industry, who run away from democratic values when it comes to the general election. And we run campaigns based on tearing our opponents down rather than offering real hope and real solutions. And so that's why I'm committed in this campaign, and if I get through the primary, to not attacking folks, to not attacking parties and ideologies. My sense is that we can actually stand up as Democrats, run on democratic values, present solutions, run on a progressive platform, and succeed in Kentucky.
Jim Gray.
Well, I'll be a bit of a contrarian here because I suspect that the gathering here tonight of these candidates is a good illustration of how important the campaign is and how important this election is. And I would say that we're seeing that same passion and that same expression across America today. People are tired of the politics as usual. People are tired, citizens are tired of the gridlock in Washington, and there is a lot of economic anxiety. All of that together translates into that we can expect a high turnout in the fall.
Rory Houlihan.
Mr. Kendall, you're absolutely right. Kitchen table issues are our strength. We should always be using them and working towards making people's lives better and better. Citizens United is actually unfounded. If you go back to San Bernardino versus Southern Pacific, Justice Wade was on his deathbed, and Bancroft Davis was a railroad guy who basically slipped in a Trojan horse. It doesn't support corporations as people at all. And so Citizens United is just unfounded. Next thing.
We'll pick up on that in just a second. We're going to begin our next round of questioning here with WHAS 11's Chris Williams, and he'll begin with Ron Leach.
If you're elected, you'll be a freshman senator in probably a Republican-led Senate. How will you be able to accomplish anything and be able to benefit the people of Kentucky?
Question whether it'll be a Republican-led Senate. Republicans have to defend 24 seats this election year. Democrats have to defend, I believe, 12, just the reverse of what it was last time. We can flip the Senate. Regardless, we don't have a senator up in Washington now representing us. He represents a narrow ideology. He has really discredited the Senate. There used to be the most deliberative, most respected body on earth. Instead, he uses it for a stage for his own ideology, for his own brand, and not to represent and speak for and be a voice for our fellow Kentuckians.
Mr. Rechtenwald.
Realistically, whichever one of us is elected is not going to have a lot of clout as a freshman senator. But that's true of every freshman senator every year. But once you get in there and you get a little time under your belt, you get some better committee appointments, those kinds of things work for you. But when I'm elected by taking no money, it's going to wake up some eyes across the country. Kentucky's going to be a catalyst in this situation. So many times it seems like we're at the bottom of a list when it comes to whatever it is we're measuring. But once we prove to the rest of the country that it is possible to beat big money by electing a candidate who won't accept any money, then others will be encouraged to do likewise in the next 2-year election cycle.
Sellis Wilder.
Well, first of all, we can't take it for granted that the Democrats won't hold the Senate. If Donald Trump is nominated for the Republican presidential race, then there's a very good chance that the Democrats will have a strong showing. And I expect that any of us who manage to knock off Rand Paul will be pretty popular within the Democratic caucus. When I helped defeat the Bluegrass Pipeline, I was really proud to work with a diverse coalition ranging from Tea Partiers and Republicans to churches and nuns and farmers and ranchers and environmental groups and grassroots groups and nonprofits. And a lot of people didn't think we could win because the other side had all the money. But we worked together, and our cause was just, and we persevered even when common sense and conventional wisdom said we couldn't. That's something that our nation needs right now. That's what Kentucky needs right now.
Jim Gray?
I think everyone here really illustrates that what the founders intended, and they intended for people to have real jobs and real careers and then go into public service. And everyone here is expressing that. In my own point of view on this is that I would break the mold. I would be a senator who would advocate for job and focus on jobs, jobs, jobs. I would focus on building our infrastructure for a modern economy. And through that, and because of that, people will, and our economy will strengthen. And why is that? Everyone in the world wants a good job, and jobs give purpose and meaning in life.
Roy Houlihan.
Okay. What was the question?
The question was, if you're elected, you'll be a freshman senator, most likely in a Republican-led Senate. How will you be able to accomplish anything that will benefit the people of Kentucky?
Okay. Well, that's a good question. And the answer is that you make things work by working with people, compromises, and things like that. In business, you find a way of making things work by often pointing out what you agree on and not what you disagree on. In business, you often have to work with somebody who you may not totally agree with, okay? You also point out a lot of the stuff that they do behind your backs, like H.R. 933. H.R. 933 was for the veterans. It basically was a giveaway. If you go ahead and start pointing out those giveaways, then they're most likely going to work with you than work against you.
All right. Jeff Kinder.
Well, I got a lot of values that I stand for and a lot of things that I stand for. And I can tell you that I would fight like crazy, and I would be the unordinary senator. You know, I would just try to control my temper from what I see going on in Washington, because sometimes you just look and you just scream at your TV. You're like, you know, really? You wonder how the person walks and chews bubble gum at the same time, much less becomes a United States senator. So I would probably raise a little cane when I got to the Senate and tell them to get their butt to work and get to work for the people that are paying their salary. And that's why I was the first candidate, and maybe the only candidate, I don't know, but I signed for term limits. We got to get rid of the career politicians, and that's the only way is term limits.
All right. Gentlemen, you all stuck to your time so well tonight. We have about 3 minutes left in our broadcast. We're going to do a lightning round of questions. We can pick it up with Joe Girth of the Courier-Journal.
And we're asking for one-word answers from each of you on these questions.
Tom Rechtenwald, we could start with him. He's
Okay, Tom, the first question is, other than a spouse or significant other, who do you listen to for political advice?
I pray to God.
My father.
I listen to a lot of people.
Bill Proxmire.
Chris Matthews, Harbaugh.
Thousands of our fellow Kentuckians that I've met with and talked with during our campaign so far.
Renee.
If elected, your number one priority when you get to Washington?
Zealous.
Developing new economic alternatives for our communities that have been depressed by the inevitable decline of the coal industry.
Jobs, jobs, and jobs.
Get rid of the graft so you can get the jobs, jobs, and jobs.
I just tell you, if it's still a Republican-controlled Senate, Mitch McConnell's going to hate me. I'm just going to be in there fighting for all the democratic values that we believe in.
Ron.
Level the playing field, build a Kentucky and America that works for all of us again, so that folks actually have money to invest back in an economy, which will drive jobs.
Tom.
I will let the middle class know, those who are struggling to stay in the middle class and those who are struggling to get there, that I've got your back.
All right, Chris, we can continue. We begin with Jim Gray.
Do you believe in clean coal technology?
And this is a single answer?
Quick
I do.
answer.
Yes. We can improve. Of course we can improve. Coal should be a bridge to the future. We don't have to, in my view, we don't have to destroy our economy in order
One
to
word.
build our environment.
Rory?
Well, I thought you gave us more time. Sorry.
Yes, and I actually have worked on clean coal technology.
Jeff?
Yes, it can be a bridge to the future, and it does exist, but it's a bridge.
Ron?
It's not there yet. UK's got very robust programs, also converting coal into diesel, things that should be explored.
Tom?
We can do it, but the coal barons have to want to do it.
And Celis?
It doesn't exist yet, but I believe in science. It's possible. We flew to the moon.
All right. Well, thank you, gentlemen. We appreciate your time and staying on time. The only question we didn't ask you is who's going to win this year's Kentucky Derby. So if anybody's got that winner, our debate has been quite successful tonight. We do want to thank Simmons College of Kentucky, based right here in Louisville, for their enthusiasm of this debate and also joining us tonight. I'll be joining Renee Murphy tonight on 11 at 11. We'll have full coverage of the day's news and more on this debate. Join us at 11, and thank you for joining us.
The Democratic debate on WHAS 11 has been presented by Simmons College of Kentucky.